They're just ponies that hide in the sky, then why are they so bad? We made our way back to Equestrian Express, and Boxtape looked worried when he said, "If you're gonna go up against the Raiders and their boss, you're gonna need something a little tougher than that stable barden y'all been wearing around." What do you mean by stronger? Silver Snip added some extra armor to my barding, I asked. The day before, she'd taken my barding and added plates of metal under the fabric, and boiled leather over the shoulders and chest to help protect me better. To that, he replied, "I've been around the bush a few times, and I know how to make something strong." He opened a wardrobe and took out a pretty average-looking duster and tossed it to me. Just looking at it, you'd think it's just normal duster. But as I felt it with my hooves, I could feel metal under, no, in between the fabric. I was amazed at the way it was designed. Not only did it have metal in between the fabric, it had pads where the metal was too, not to mention how comfortable it was. "This is really nice," I said, moving around to get a better feeling for it. "You're gonna need that fighting those raiders, but having fancy armor ain't gonna save your ass. You'll need some firepower you can trust. Take my old repeater. It'll have more power than that crappy rifle you took off that raider," Boxtape said. I took the rifle and looked it over, and saw a small plaque screwed into the stock it had, "Old Festus," engraved on it. "Thanks, but what kind of ammo does it use?" I asked. "Good old 357 Magnum. It'll put a hole in a pony faster than taint mutates a bloat sprite. Here, take these boxes of ammo before you go charging in empty," he replied. I fiddled with it a little bit and asked, "How do I load this thing?" "You see that hole on the side? Put the ammo in there and crank that lever and you're all set. Now you gotta get going. It ain't gonna take long to drag those ponies over to the slavers," Boxtape explained. "I thought they said we had 3 days," I asked, looking up from the rifle. "The day you start trusting a raider is the day you die," he said with a smirk. I nodded and said, "Gotcha. I'll get going now. Thanks again for the gear. I'm gonna need it." I opened the door and started to make my way out of town to the raiders' camp, trying to make up a plan as I went. But everything I came up with sounded like suicide. Of course, any plan that involved sneaking into a camp inhabited by cannibalistic psychos was suicide, however you put it. It seemed like I'd only been walking for a few minutes, but in my scheming, I must have lost track of time. I could see the camp in the distance, swarming with ponies, ready to tear me to shreds and use what they didn't eat as decorations. Fear started to take hold, and I stopped dead in my tracks, unable to move. What if I fail and get sold to slavers with the rest of them? Or even worse, what if I die? I couldn't think about these things right now. I needed to be brave and save those ponies. I started to walk again and broke into a gallop. I was almost to the camp in a full gallop, ready to destroy any raider that got in my way. Suddenly, some pony stepped out from behind a rock and slammed into me. "What the hell are you doing? You've got to be nuts if you think you can take all of them on alone," she exclaimed. It was a pony I'd met when I was in the camp before. "I need to get them out of there. It's my fault they even came and took those foals away, and Silver Snip," I replied. "Calm down. I know about your friends and I can help you, but you can't just go charging on in there. If you just run in there, you'll be gunned down. But if you're so determined to get yourself killed, I think I might have an idea to get you in. Come with me," she said. Before I just go in a camp full of murdering psychopaths with some pony I don't know anything about, I need to know what this supposed plan is. Also, who the hell are you anyway? I said. She sighed, rubbing a hoof over her head, saying, "I'm Paladin Sapphire Stone. I'm with the Steel Rangers. I was sent here to find out why these raiders have congregated here, and if they're onto something, to find out what it is. Their leader is a former Steel Ranger from Manhattan, who was exiled after committing crimes against the Steel Rangers. That suit of armor that he wears is standard issue for a Steel Ranger Paladin. He stole it when he was exiled. One of my objectives is to take the armor back, and another is to recover a ledger that he keeps in his quarters under lock and key. I recently learned where he keeps the key. Unfortunately, he keeps it on him at all times, so we have to catch him off guard and make him give it to us. The only other option is to kill him, but he always wears the armor unless he's sitting on that shitty throne of his inside of his quarters." Okay, that's a lot to take in. How are we supposed to get to him? Are we supposed to get into the camp? I can't just walk in with you wearing a duster and carrying a rifle on my back. And how will any of this help me get my friend and those foals back? I asked. "If you want to get them back, the best way to take down a monster is to cut off its head. Basically, if we take down the boss, his followers will fall into anarchy and kill each other in a fight for power. As for how I'll get you in there, I'm gonna take you prisoner, Sapphire said, before I could continue ranting. What? I asked, backing away a little. If I take you prisoner and you play along, the boss is gonna want to see the pony you killed as raiders. I'm his right hoof pony, so he won't have any pony else in the room, since he trusts me, so he'll let you in with me. When we get in there, I'll twitch my left ear if I decide we're gonna jump him and knock him out. I'll twitch my right ear if we're gonna kill him. But that most likely won't be the case, she explained. That sounds freaking crazy. Are you sure that's gonna work? I replied, trying to get through the plan again in my head. It has to. Otherwise, we might as well be putting a bullet through our heads right now. We've wasted enough time already. We have to go, she replied. What about your mission you told me about? I asked. I've already spent more time here than I was supposed to. I was planning on doing this soon. You just gave me a good excuse to, she said with a cocky grin. Wait, what about my friends? I asked again. They're being held in cages on the east side of the camp near the, meat pit. We can get them out after we take care of the boss, Sapphire said, with a little bit of a gag. All right, let's go. But tell me, does this boss have a name? I asked. Yeah, but he only goes by the boss now. Probably just to quench the thirst of his ego, she replied. We walked toward the entrance to the camp. Sapphire took my gun and had it slung over her back. To keep up the act, she had her shotgun pointed at me. I felt a little uncomfortable at the thought she might accidentally shoot me. We walked through the entrance to the camp and were stopped by one of the guards posted there. Who's this prisoner you've brought with you? The foul-smelling stallion asked. A gift for the boss, Sapphire said, smugly around the grip of her shotgun. For a shotgun, it was relatively small, like the barrel was cut in half. Well, I hope he likes it. She's a little too small to ride that ride. I'd ask for first dibs, but I like having my head. I know what the boss does when he gets sloppy seconds. Bring her to him and let Scythe know when he's done, so he can clean up. You know he likes his quarters nice and neat, the guard said. We made our way to the center of the camp, where there was this large corrugated metal shack. He's in there. Are you ready? Sapphire whispered. About as ready as I'll ever be, I replied quietly. The door opened, and Sapphire shoved me in and followed as I stumbled, almost tripping over my hooves. Who's this? The boss asked. Boss, this is that little bitch that slaughtered our comrades. She tried to kill me when I was out looking for Razor, Sapphire said, almost convincing me that it really happened. Close the door, he said in an eerily calm tone. Sapphire closed the door behind us, and without the boss noticing, she locked it. The lead raider looked even more menacing out of his armor than he did when he was wearing it. He got up off a makeshift throne made out of pieces of other benches and chairs, then took 3 steps toward us. Boss, she was carrying this too, Sapphire said, taking my rifle off her back and dropping it in front of him as she stepped in front of me. I have to say, this is a beautiful firearm, but the thing that gets me is where she got it, because the only settlement close to camp is Cartwheel. If she was able to kill our comrades on the northeast side of camp, how is she able to get another gun that looks freshly maintained? The only town close to the camp that she could have possibly got a new weapon from is Cartwheel, and that means she got past our camp somehow, didn't she? I know she stole armor from Blade along with his rifle and snuck through the camp. She even evaded my eyes when she was here. How did she make it to town so easily without any pony noticing? The boss said threateningly. Boss, are you saying we got a mole in our midst? Sapphire asked. That is exactly what I said, Nail, or dare I say Paladin, the boss said angrily. What are you saying, boss? I'm not the mole. Are you losing it or something? Sapphire said defensively. He gave an evil smile and said slowly, You know, for a Steel Ranger, you sure are stupid. I'd think the Rangers would have taught you to be more perceptive. I've had my real right hoof follow you since you joined up. Do you think for a moment I really trusted you? I would have killed you a lot earlier, but I was interested to see what you were up to. Sapphire's left ear twitched, and I jumped on the boss. With his focus aimed at Sapphire, I was able to at least get the element of surprise and bring him to the ground. Finally, realizing what happened, he started to fight back. He was able to turn to the tables and get on top of me. He brought his hoof up to strike me when Sapphire jumped on his back and got him in a chokehold. He rolled off me and started slamming himself against the wall, trying to get Sapphire off his back. As quick as I could, I scanned the room for old Festus. It was still on the floor where Sapphire dropped it. The boss slammed Sapphire as hard as he could against the wall, and I could hear the wind get knocked out of her as she released her grip. I started to scramble toward the rifle on the ground as he came toward me. The rifle was so close, I could almost feel it in my hooves when it was suddenly kicked and slid across the floor to the other side of the room. Once again, the large stallion was on top of me, and he was relentlessly bludgeoning me with his hooves. This was it. I was going to die, beaten to death by this monster of the wasteland. Suddenly, the constant pounding disappeared, and I noticed that he was now on top of Sapphire, trying to strangle her against the ground with his hooves. I have to do something. I have to get him off of her. I looked around the room and noticed that his throne had been knocked forward during the struggle. On the throne, I saw that there were jagged metal spikes tied to the back of it, like some sort of sick and twisted decoration. I tried to get up, but started to get lightheaded. I couldn't stand. If I succeeded in getting to my hooves, I'd probably pass out. As best I could, I focused my magic on the throne and turned to it so that it was facing the boss, and then grasped the largest spike in the center and started to pull it out with my magic. I could see the life fading from Sapphire's eyes. I had to try harder. Focusing, I pulled and I saw the spear-like spike start to slip from its holding, and finally, with one last ounce of my mental strength, I pulled it as hard as I could. The spark released from its hold and hurled toward the boss. It was a sickening sound. It impaled him through the shoulder, throwing him back into the wall with the tip of the spike pinning him to the wall. "Take that, you psychotic bastard." I managed to get out. "Sapphire, are you all right? Sapphire," I asked, shaking her.
"She's probably dead already, and when I get free of this, you're next,"
the boss said in pain.
"Hey, kid. Thanks. I really owe you one,"
Sapphire said with a hacking cough, sounding hoarse as she spoke. "You okay?" I asked, laying there on the floor looking over at her.
"Yeah, I'll be fine,"
she said, getting to her hooves. I heard a disgusting sound. It was like somebody was pulling their hoof out of a vat of slime.
"Oh!"
the boss exclaimed.
"Looks like she got you just right. There's no way you're getting free of that without help,"
Sapphire said to the boss. She got up and walked over to him and pushed on the rod that was sticking out of his shoulder. He screamed in pain as Sapphire said,
"That'll make sure you stay put."
"What's going on in there?" a raider stallion asked from outside the door.
"Everything's fine. The bitch just fought back a little and managed to lay one on the boss,"
Sapphire said as she put her hoof on the boss's mouth. "Why is there a spike in the wall?" the raider asked again.
"He restrained her so he could finish,"
she replied quickly. I could hear the stallion walk away, and Sapphire took her hoof off the boss's mouth.
"I swear, I'll tear your head off with my bare hooves when I get a hold of you,"
he said with absolution in his eyes. Sapphire smirked.
"I'd like to see you try with that severed tendon in your shoulder."
My vision was starting to return to normal, and I could see that he was bleeding badly from his wound. I still didn't stand. Sapphire came over to me with a bottle of healing potion and put the opening in my mouth.
"Drink this. It'll heal your wounds,"
she said, slowly pouring it in my mouth. I drank the strange-tasting purple liquid, and I could feel the pain in my face fade. After a minute, I felt almost like I'd never been beaten. I was able to get to my hooves, still feeling some soreness, but the lightheadedness was gone. Sapphire walked back over to the boss and asked,
"Where's the key?"
"What key?" he responded.
"The key to your hoof locker,"
Sapphire clarified.
"You're after my ledger, eh? Well, that's just too fucking bad, isn't it? 'Cause I'm not telling you where it is,"
the boss said confidently.
"Fine. I'll just have to search for it. I know you keep it with you,"
Sapphire said as she started to pat him down. She checked every inch of him and couldn't find the key.
"Oh!"
he exclaimed as she pushed on the rod in his shoulder again.
"Where is it?"
she asked again.
"Ha ha ha ha. You're digging for gold in a mine full of ordinary dirt. You'll never find it,"
the boss said, laughing.
"Hey, kid, can you use your magic?"
Sapphire asked. "Yeah, why?" I replied.
"Let's just say the key isn't in the passenger wagon itself. It's in the trunk,"
she said, disgusted. "Oh, goddesses. You can't be serious. Even if I'm not touching it physically, it's still, icky," I said, grossed out just by the aspect of doing what was suggested.
"I know, but it's the only sanitary way we're going to get it out of there,"
she replied. "Are you sure he's keeping it, there?" I asked.
"Only other place on him he could keep it, and I know he wouldn't keep it anywhere else,"
she replied. "Fine, I'll do it," I said, trying not to gag too much at the thought.
"Why don't you do a little something extra while you're at it?"
the boss said smugly.
"Why don't you just take a little nap?"
Sapphire said as she hit him in the face with a stalk of Hephaestus, knocking him out. I walked over to him, and after a couple minutes of choking, gagging, and focus, I retrieved the key.
"All right, let's get the ledger. It's in the room behind that door over there,
Sapphire said as she pointed to the door in the boss's quarters. I opened the door and went to the room. I saw the hoof locker under his bed and pulled it out with my hooves, while floating the key with my magic. I unlocked it with the stinky key and saw a little book inside. I picked it up and put it in my saddlebag, and went back to the other room, leaving the key in the hoof locker. As I came back into the room, loud gunshots erupted outside, followed quickly by a loud knock on the door.
Boss, you gotta get out here. We're under attack,
A raider mare yelled outside the door.
What are we gonna do?
He's out cold, I asked Sapphire.
This,
She said as she grabbed Old Festus and opened the door. The next thing I knew, the raider's head exploded as the bullet from Old Festus pierced her skull. There were 3 more raiders outside the door. She killed each one swiftly with headshots. She took out a strange-looking gun that almost looked like it was made out of plastic. What's that? I asked.
It's a magical energy pistol. Here, take your rifle. Kill any raiders coming at you,
She said as she tossed me my gun. What about whoever's attacking the camp? Did you call for help? I asked. She looked back at me and said,
I have no way of getting a message out to the rangers that fast. Whoever they are, they can use a distraction to get out of here.
We have to get my friends. They could be hurt, or worse, I said.
All right, did you get everything in the hoof locker?
She asked. Yeah, I think so, I replied.
Good, now follow me,
She said as we walked out the door. I was expecting there to be complete carnage outside for how much gunfire I heard, but what I saw was strange. All the raiders were firing wildly into the air and at the top of a nearby cliff. What are they shooting at? I asked.
I don't know, but we should get your friends and get out of here before we find out the hard way. You see that pit over there? They're in cages right next to it. We have to make it over there and let them out. We also have to get them to safety. Luckily, where they're being held is close to the town side of camp, so it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to get them out of the camp,
Sapphire said, sounding a bit worried. Okay, let's go. The sooner the better, I said, getting ready to run out the door. We started making our way to the cages, and it seemed like the raiders were too distracted by shooting at whoever was attacking the camp. We finally made it to the pit by the cages, and there were more raiders guarding them. We stopped and took cover behind a hay cart.
We need to get them away from those cages,
Sapphire said. Okay, I've got an idea. Follow my lead, I said, feeling highly self-confident. I came out from cover and took aim at the raiders and started shooting. I was only able to take out 1 of 6 raiders and needed to reload. While I was reloading, I noticed a message on my pit buck. Combat initiated. Sats suggested. I almost forgot about my pit buck's targeting system. Once again, I came out of cover and slipped into Sats, and time seemed to slow down as the spell activated. Different body parts were highlighted on different ponies, and I could see a percentage bar, which I guess told me the probability of a successful shot. I took 4 shots, 2 in one raider's torso, and 1 in 2 other raiders' heads. All of my shots were hits. There were only 2 raiders remaining. I came out of cover to shoot again, and suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my right hind leg. I dropped back behind the car in pain, dropping my gun. As I grabbed at my hind leg where I'd been shot, I heard a strange zapping sound. Sapphire started shooting at the raiders with her magical energy pistol and got one in the foreleg, incapacitating him. She hit the other with 3 shots to the torso, and suddenly his body started to glow red and turned to a pile of ash.
All right, they're taken care of. Let's go let them out and get the hell out of here,
Sapphire said, sounding proud of herself. What about my leg? I have been shot, I asked in pain.
Take this.
She tossed me another healing potion, and I sucked it down. With my leg, for the most part healed, we went over to the cages, and what I saw was horrible. Some of the fools had been beaten, and others looked like they'd been raped. I saw Silversnip in the cage on the end. She looked like hell. Her mane was tangled and dirty, and she looked like she'd been beaten too. She was passed out in her cage, bruised and battered. I unlocked the cage and started to shake her and get her conscious. Silver, wake up. We're getting you out of here.
Shadow? How did you get here?
She murmured. I had help. But there's no time to explain. We have to go, I replied. Sapphire and I unlocked the rest of the cages and freed every pony, but they all looked like they could barely stand.
They aren't going to make it out alive in this condition,
Sapphire said urgently. Can you pull a cart? I asked.
Do I really look that scrawny to you? Yes, I can pull a cart, but not for very long on my own. I'll need help,
she replied. I should be able to help. My leg feels better than it did, and I shouldn't have a problem pulling that much weight, I said.
Good. Then let's get them loaded into the cart,
Sapphire said. We both carried fools to the hay cart, and I had to go back and help Silversnip walk to it, but eventually they were all loaded up and it was time to go. Every pony is on the cart. Let's hook up and get out of here, I said as I ushered the last fool onto the cart.
Let me see the ledger and the orb, Sapphire said.
Orb? What orb? The only thing you mentioned was the ledger, I asked.
Crap! I forgot to tell you about the orb. I'll hook up to the cart and get a head start to Cartwheel. You go back and get it,
Sapphire said frantically, rubbing her face with a hoof. I can't go alone, I said, starting to panic a little.
Yes, you can. Just be careful. I need to get these ponies to a doctor, and you can't pull this on your own. You need to hurry and get it. It's important. I'm gonna get them out of here. Now go,
she said quickly. Fine, I'll get it. I'll meet you on the way to town, I replied.
All right, good luck. I'll see you soon,
she said as she started to pull the cart away. I started to make my way back to the boss's quarters, hiding along the way so I wasn't seen by any of the raiders who weren't shooting at the camp's attackers. I was able to get back to the shack without getting seen and slip inside. I went into the bedroom, where the hoof locker was, and noticed that it was moved. It looked like it had been kicked across the floor. Everything inside scattered everywhere. I saw the shimmer of the orb. It must have rolled out whenever the hoof locker was sent flying. I walked over to it, and my heart almost jumped out of my chest when I saw the huge suit of armor standing next to me. After realizing it was empty, I grabbed the orb and stuffed it in my saddlebag. I started to make my way to the door when I remembered that Sapphire needed the suit back. I went back over to the suit and tried to figure out how to put it on, but I couldn't even find an opening or anything, so instead, I just left it there. It wasn't like it was my mission to get it back somewhere. I didn't even know how to use it. I went back into the other room to make my way out when I noticed the boss was no longer pinned against the wall. He was gone. As fast and as sneaky as I could, I made my way out the door. I got outside and looked for what the raiders were shooting at out of curiosity. A shadow flew over the camp. It looked like a pony with wings. It was a Pegasus. Knowing a pony in the sky with a gun couldn't be a good thing, I headed toward the townside gate when I was suddenly tackled.
I got you now, bitch,
the boss said as he held me down on the ground. He put his hooves on my neck and started to choke me like he had Sapphire. My vision was starting to fade and everything was starting to go black.
I'll make you pay for this hole in my shoulder.
There was a loud bang, and something wet and chunky splattered all over my face. Suddenly, everything was getting clearer. I couldn't breathe. My vision was tinted red, and there was this chunky gray stuff wetly stuck to my face. When my vision cleared to a degree to where I could see clearly through the redness, I saw what happened. The boss's head was blown to bits, and even worse, it was all over me. I couldn't help but vomit all over the headless husk that lay on top of me, twitching.
Gross. If I had my life saved by a complete stranger, I wouldn't barf on the body before they can drag it off of me. Come on, that's just rude,
the strange Pegasus stallion said. He was light gray, with a blue mane, and his wings faded from light gray at the base to blue at the tip to match his mane. I couldn't see what color his eyes were behind his sunglasses, and he had a strange cutie mark. It was just a circle with intersecting lines meeting in the center. He dragged the headless corpse off of me and helped me to my hooves. Who the hell are you? I asked.
That's not important right now. There's a raider with a cart full of prisoners. We gotta get those ponies and rescue them,
he replied. She's not a raider. She's my friend. She's bringing them back to a town called Cartwheel to get medical treatment. They've been hurt pretty badly by these monsters, I explained. Suddenly he picked out a pistol and pointed at me. Then he fired. After a second, I realized I hadn't been shot, and I looked behind me just in time to watch a raider mare drop to the ground.
We gotta go now,
he said as he picked me up and took to the air. Ah! Put me down right now, I screamed as we flew into the air, higher and higher.
If I did that, you'd fall, and I don't think you'd want that, he retorted.
Where are we going? I asked, trying not to look down.
You don't like to listen, do you? I told you where we're going, but I guess the plan's changed. We're going to meet your friend and make sure those ponies get to safety in that town where you were talking about, he replied.
Can't we walk instead? I asked, trying not to look down again.
No, flying's faster. I promise I won't drop you as long as you don't squirm, he said arrogantly.
You're an ass, I scoffed.
Hey, at least I promised not to drop you, he said with a smirk.
We'd only been flying for a couple minutes when he suddenly decided to break into a nosedive.
What are you doing?
I exclaimed, feeling my stomach jump somewhere into my throat.
Calm down. Don't you see the cart? It's right there. We're not gonna crash, he said nonchalantly as we dove toward the ground.
Okay, just don't scare me like that. I'm not used to being flown around by a crazy pony with wings, I said. We descended down to the cart, and he finally put me down. Sapphire was hiding with the other ponies in the cart. I walked closer to the cart to talk to her. She jumped out and pointed her pistol at the Pegasus. Stop! He's not going to hurt us. He was the one that was attacking the raider camp. I don't know why, but he was, I said. She's right. All I want is to see those ponies safely return to their homes, he said in his own defense.
Horse Apples, he's Enclave. Look at his cutie mark. He's a Pegasus under the clouds. If he wasn't Enclave, it would be branded off,
she yelled. What's an enclave? I asked arrogantly.
They're called the Great and Pegasus Enclave, and they're the ones who keep this eerie cloud cover over the sky with their weather machines. They've been hiding up there since the first bombs went off 200 years ago. Those cowards think that they can shut themselves away from the wasteland and act like there's nothing down here but dust, collapsed buildings, and dead trees,
Sapphire said angrily. If they're just ponies that hide in the sky, then why are they so bad? I asked, really confused by her sudden anger.
The Enclave themselves are the government up there, and the only time they come under the clouds is to cause more death and destruction. Then they say the ponies on the ground aren't worth saving yet, and run back home to safety,
Sapphire explained.
Wait a sec, you Pegasus. Where's your armor?
Armor? The only armor I had was what I brought from my stable, and I had to ditch that a while ago, he replied.
Stable? What do you mean, stable? I've never heard of a Pegasus stable,
she said, sounding confused at the fact that he was a Pegasus and apparently from a stable. Yeah, it's north of here, Stable 97. It's a couple days' flight from here non-stop. It's run by some questionable ponies, but they wouldn't go and rampage the wasteland. They're too scared to leave, because it's like instant death or something, he explained. Can't we discuss this later? We've got to go, and there are sick ponies that I think take precedence, I interrupted.
Fine, but I'm keeping my eye on him. If he does anything out of the ordinary, there's going to be a hole in his head,
Sapphire said, holstering her gun. Whoa, harsh. What did I ever do to you? He asked.
Just shut up and let's go,
Sapphire said angrily. Sapphire and I hooked up to the hay cart and began pulling it to cartwheel. The Pegasus was up in the sky, keeping lookout for any danger coming our way. I could see the town in the distance. This cart was so freaking heavy. I didn't know if I could go on for much longer. How did Sapphire pull this thing by herself and get so far with it from the camp? I guess she's stronger than she looks. We got into town and made our way straight to the clinic so the ponies in the cart could get treated for their injuries. I helped the Pegasus and Sapphire unload the ponies from the cart and carry them to beds in this clinic. Sapphire kept staring at the Pegasus like he was going to fly away with one of the fillies or something. From what I could tell, he wasn't bad. He was just an ass. After we made sure the ponies from the camp were getting the help they needed, I had all three of us go to Equestrian Express so we had somewhere to talk things out, and hopefully find out who the hell this Pegasus was. We walked into Equestrian Express and were instantly greeted by Box Tape.
Well, flatten a snake and call it jerky. You actually made it out alive. How the hell did you pull that off?
Box Tape said excitedly. Well, I started to say. Just happened to be in the neighborhood and decided to lend a hoof and blow the head off the big raider pony choking her on the ground, the Pegasus interrupted. Thanks for taking all the credit, jackass, I snapped. I didn't take all the credit. You and Grumpy Hooves there took down a lot of the raiders on the ground that I couldn't see through my scope, he retorted.
Scope? You got a rifle stashed somewhere?
Sapphire asked. Correction, I had a rifle. Flew down to get the big raider's body off of, hey, what's your name again? The Pegasus asked. I never told you my name. It's Shadowstar. What's yours? I replied. I'm Stardust. Anyway, so I flew down to get the body off of Shadowstar and put my gun on the ground. When we flew away, I forgot to pick it up, he continued to explain. I don't know whether to laugh at your name or the fact that you forgot your gun, I said while trying to keep from laughing. What's wrong with my name? He asked. Oh, it's nothing. It just sounds like a mare's name, I said, still trying not to laugh. Oh, yeah? Well, so does yours, he said, trying to sound defensive. That's because I am a mare. Nice comeback, genius, I replied through my snickering.
Why were you attacking the camp in the first place?
Sapphire asked, before Stardust and I could continue bickering. I was just flying by the camp, and I saw the mare and those fools in the cages, so I landed on a cliff and started taking out the raiders so I could rescue them, Stardust replied.
So you just happened to fly over the camp, noticed that they were prisoners, and decided to save them out of the kindness of your heart? I don't buy it, especially when you said you were from a stable. Not only have I not heard of Stable 97, I've never heard of a stable that had Pegasi in it. Even if you were from a stable, how did you get out? From what I know about stables that are still operational, they don't usually let ponies just leave,
Sapphire said accusingly. Yeah, I did just happen to fly over and want to help. And yes, I am from a stable. They didn't just let me waltz out either. I had to escape, and in turn do some things that I didn't want to do. I don't really care if you believe me or not, but I'm telling the truth. You think I'm one of those Enclave ponies? I've known who the Enclave are since I was a colt, and until 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know what they really do. My whole life in the stable, I was raised to believe that the Grand Pegasus Enclave was Ponykind's best hope of rebuilding Equestria. Before I left the stable, I found out that the Pegasi in the stable weren't the original occupants. The Enclave invaded the stable a couple generations ago and killed all of them so they could use it to brainwash us into joining their garrison of soldiers, Stardust explained.
Well, I apologize for accusing you, but I'm still a little suspicious,
Sapphire said. I guess I can't blame you for being suspicious, he said. Hey, Sapphire, what did you mean earlier when you said that his cutie mark would be branded off? I asked.
They're called Dashites. When Pegasi betray the Enclave and leave the sky, they're hunted down and branded with the cutie mark of the first Dashite to permanently mark them as contaminated. Once branded as a Dashite, I've heard that you can't return to the clouds. If you do, you'll be shot on sight,
Sapphire explained. That's horrible. How could some pony do that to another pony? I asked again.
If you ever meet an Enclave soldier, you'll find out pretty quickly what they're capable of,
Sapphire said.
If y'all are done arguing, I'd like to say something. Who's this mare that's with y'all?
Box Tape interrupted.
Oh, please forgive me for being so rude. I'm Steel Ranger Star Paladin Sapphire Stone. It's nice to meet you, sir,
she replied.
A pleasure, Miss Sapphire. When you see Star Paladin Sandstorm, tell him that Box Tape said howdy,
he said with a wink.
You know Star Paladin Sandstorm? She asked.
Sure do. Little guy used to be my bodyguard in my courier days, when he was a young fella, barely an adult. He joined up with y'all just before I retired from being a courier, and I became the postmaster of this here town,
Box Tape explained.
Okay, I'll tell him for you,
she said. Hey, Sapphire, I also forgot to ask you. Didn't you say you needed to get the boss's armor back to the Steel Rangers? I asked.
The only raiders who knew I wasn't one of them are dead. I should be able to go back to the camp, take the armor, and finish off the rest of the raiders in the camp,
she replied. What about the boss's right hoof that he said was watching you? I asked.
I'm pretty sure he's already dead. Razor was his right hoof before I was, until I planted something that I stole from the boss in his hoof locker, and he was punished for it by being dethroned as his right hoof. I should leave now so they don't get suspicious of my absence. Do you still have the ledger and the orb?
Sapphire asked. Yeah, I still have them. Here. What's the orb for anyway? I asked, giving her the items.
It's a memory orb. It contains a memory of a pony who was recording that moment with a recollector, or if a unicorn takes a memory out of their mind. I was told that this memory orb contains a memory of a mare that came from a nearby stable who had some valuable information. My elder thinks it might have some information that could help us. I'm not sure with what, but she still wanted it. I'm still not sure how the boss got his hooves on it,
she explained. Is there any way I could look at it before you go? I asked.
Why?
She asked, giving me a quizzical look. My mother left my stable about 8 years ago, and I want to find out what happened to her. I think she might have been the one whose memory is in this orb. The overmare of my stable was looking for something she left in the stable when she decided to leave. It sounded like what she was looking for was important. The reason I left was because whatever she was looking for, I think, is on this Pitbuck's memory or something. Because she was willing to cut off my leg to get it from me, I answered.
Interesting. I'll tell you what. Keep the orb and bring it to these coordinates when you're finished with it. To watch it, all you need to do is touch it with your magic since you're a unicorn. Also, since memory orbs take just as long to watch as the memory took to experience, there's no telling how long it'll take for you to watch it, and I need to get back to the camp,
Sapphire said, as she took my left foreleg and added a marker to my Pitbuck. Where will the coordinates take me? Also, don't you need the orb to bring back to the Steel Rangers? I asked.
I can work something out. The coordinates will take you to an underground bunker. The bunker's where my Steel Rangers chapter is. I'll meet you there when you find your way. When you get there, tell the guard at the intercom that you're here to speak with Star Paladin Sapphire Stone. If they ask why, just tell them to shut it and find me. They'll give you some crap, I'm sure, but I'll get you in,
she replied. All right. Thank you for all your help. I couldn't have gotten those ponies out of there on my own, I said.
You're welcome. I'll be leaving now. I can't waste any more time. It was nice to meet you, Box Tape, and Stardust, thanks for the help. Sorry we got off on the wrong hoof.
With that, she walked out the door after, giving me the memory orb and saying goodbye. I slipped the memory orb back into my saddlebag, deciding to watch it later.
So what happened at the camp anyhow? Everything I'm hearing just ain't adding up in my head,
Box Tape asked. Well, when I was on my way into the camp, Sapphire saw me and was able to get to me before I was discovered by the guards. She was the one that helped me get past the camp when I was on my way to Cartwheel in the first place. I told her why I was there, and she was able to get me into the camp pretending to take me prisoner, and then got me to the boss's quarters, so he could get what she needed to get from his room, and take him down in the process. When we were in his quarters, he told her that he knew who she really was, and she gave me a signal that we needed to jump him. We both wrestled with him, and were both almost killed. But when I was on the ground, half beaten to death, I was able to pin him against the wall using my magic to stab him through the shoulder with one of the metal spikes he had attached to his throne. The next part, I decided to bend the truth a little. He had a key to his hoof locker in one of his saddlebags, which we retrieved and were able to get to his ledger. After that, we heard gunshots outside, and made our way to the cages while the raiders were distracted. Later, I found out that it was Stardust that they were shooting at, I explained. Yep, sure was. Those drugged-out idiots thought I was a monster, Stardust interrupted. I gritted my teeth. Anyway, we had to kill the raiders guarding the cages, and then were able to let them out and get them into the hay cart. When we were leaving, Sapphire remembered that she forgot to tell me to grab the orb too. She pulled the cart by herself out of the camp as far as she could, and I went back and got the orb. When I was on my way out of the boss's quarters, I noticed that he got unpinned from the wall somehow, and I ran out the door and got tackled by him. He started to choke me and... I blew his head off and flew her ass out of there, Stardust interrupted again. Ugh. Yes, he saved my life and brought me to where Sapphire was after I told him she wasn't a raider trying to take them somewhere else, I said annoyed.
Wow, what a tale. Even better, we don't gotta worry about those raiders coming to terrorize the town again. I gotta say, I didn't think y'all could pull it off. That was a damn suicide mission, and you made it out alive,
Box Tape said. She sure did, thanks to me. And for a little pony, she can really eat a lot of food, Stardust said. Oh, really? How do you know that? I asked Stardust in an obviously pissy tone. 'Cause you totally blew chunks all over the boss pony's body after I took him out, Stardust said, embarrassing me beyond belief.
Ha! I don't care who you are. That's funny as hell,
Box Tape laughed. Footnote. Level up. New perk added. Action Philly. Level 1. You know your targeting spell like the back of your hoof, making you about 20% cooler in combat. For each level of this perk, you gain plus 15 action points in stats.